Jovi and Dawn never looked the same twice, but Captain Layla Chen still recognized the subtle shift that announced sunrise on the gas giant Anahit. The planet wore a skirt of gold and orchid storms that scintillated beneath its ring of mirror arrays. Those mirrors, placed there by human engineers 2 centuries earlier, caught starlight and bounced it downward, warming hydrogen seas and coaxing floating forests of genetically sculpted lichen to bloom. Terraforming, the brochures said, had made Anahit habitable. Layla's squad of hover infantry begged to differ. Nothing about skimming the shoulders of a planet-wide hurricane at Mach 2 felt remotely habitable. She tightened the seals on her ablative cowl and looked down the launch rail. 30 meters away, her squad's storm jets waited in their clamps, white hulls already shimmering with the friction heat of the upper troposphere. The jets were little more than armored sleds strapped to ramjet intakes, designed to ride the howling jet streams themselves. If you aimed them wrong, the wind would thrash you like an insect and fling you 1,000 kilometers off course. Aim them right, and the invisible rivers of atmosphere became highways straight to the enemy's doorstep. The doorstep, in this case, was Temple Station 9, a fortress that floated in the eye of the endless cyclone called the Gorgon Spiral. Enemy engineers had anchored 9 to the fast-moving hurricane wall with colossal graphene cables, harvesting the storm's kinetic fury to power coil guns and defense grids. For 4 months, the Commonwealth fleet had hammered away from orbit, but the fort's power core never flickered. To end the siege, someone had to go inside and cut the tethers. Someone like Layla and the 12 souls under her command. "Storm Riders, ready?" she transmitted, sub-vocals tickling the throat mic. Icons on her visor blinked green one after another. Beckett, Solano, Worth, Kim, Hasovich, Green, Patel, Osei, Farrow, Jun, O'Malley, and finally Arjun Ree, her tech sergeant. 12 heartbeats. 12 names she'd memorized back on Lagos Station before any of them had even earned their wings. The launch master's voice boomed through the catwalk, muffled by the roar outside. "Window in 30 seconds. Board and disable or die trying, Captain." "Copy." Her pulse quickened, but her breathing remained measured. The ritual worked every time. Inhale for 4 counts, hold, exhale for 6. She detached from the umbilical, stepped onto the sled, and straddled the saddle grip. Magnetic boots clicked to the deck. A heads-up reticle flickered, trajectory plotted, hurricane vectors modeled, time to target, 5 minutes 43 seconds. Anahit's horizon curved in the distance, pallid lilac under the first touch of dawn. Beneath that lavender sheet, the hurricane wall glowed like embers stirred in a forge, reds and yellows bright enough to silhouette Temple 9's multi-tiered gantries. Layla locked her knees and raised her left fist. 12 riders copied. "Punch it!" The clamps released. Jet and rider dropped, free-falling into a 300-kilometer-per-hour headwind. Ramjet intakes screamed alive, compressing hydrogen, spitting plasma. Acceleration yanked at Layla's spine. Gravity went from 1G to nearly 4, then eased as the sled found its envelope. Her HUD scrolled numbers: 700 meters per second, 800, 1,000. Supersonic ripples formed shock diamonds that fizzed off her slipstream like dying stars. Crosswinds tried to torque in her sideways, but micro-thrusters compensated in fractions of a second. Around her, 12 contrails braided together, glowing neon in the scattered sunlight like something half alive. She no longer rode the wind. She was the wind, invisible and unstoppable. Yet Temple 9 rose ahead like a flint dagger against the sky. The fortress consisted of concentric floating rings, an inverted ziggurat, its underside bristling with atmospheric turbines and missile pods. Static lightning spidered along the copper bussing that belted the hull. Somewhere inside, the Soru Free Guard waited with rifles and exosuits, certain the Commonwealth wouldn't dare breach the wall. They didn't know about storm riders. Nobody ever did until it was too late. "Ravens to Talon," Beckett called over the squad net. "Picking up drone pickets, Vector 241. Her tactical overlay highlighted a swarm of dots corkscrewing up from the lower decks. Autonomous interceptors, cheap, agile, and deadly in numbers. Layla answered by flicking her right wrist. A panel on her sled's flank irised open, exposing a rack of canister munitions. "Phantoms, scram 'em." The squad loosed 30 micro-warheads. In midair, they burst, not into fire but into streamers of chaff, seeded with EM noise so dense it turned radar into blindfolds. Each warhead also spawned a decoy drone, identical signature, opposite heading. The fortress's point defenses spat tungsten. Baffled targeting AIs chased illusions, while the human-piloted sleds zipped through the gaps. Still, two interceptors got smart. They went optical, plotted a true collision course, and screamed in from starboard. Hasovich snapped his Gauss carbine up and fired 3 times. Nickel-iron slugs lanced the first drone. It bloomed like a metal flower. The second juked, veered onto a new path directly toward Layla's craft. She kicked her sled sideways and felt her ribs compress from the G-load. Too slow. The drone was on her in 2 heartbeats. A crimson bolt ripped from somewhere to her left. Jun's muzzle flared. The shot parted the drone's guidance vanes. It tumbled, shredded by its own centrifugal forces, debris smearing across Layla's visor before the breeze washed it clean. She flashed Jun a thank you ping. No time for sentiment. The approach corridor narrowed. The hurricane wall loomed, a living cylinder of scalding clouds that climbed 30 kilometers skyward. At its calm center, Temple 9 floated in relative stillness. But on either side raged winds powerful enough to tear destroyers apart. The only safe entrance was a maintenance bay, codenamed Alcazar, on the fortress's leeward side. Its blast doors were rumored stuck half open after last month's skirmish. "Angle to Alcazar," Layla ordered. Her squad banked. The sensation of turning a Mach 2 jet on a dime inside a storm would have killed them without the sled's inertial dampers. Even so, her vision tunneled and she tasted copper. When color returned, the fortress filled her perspective. Antenna spires and hangar cranes shot past, close enough to brush with a boot. Lasers stitched the air, pink needles that burned through the chaff veil. One kissed Osie's left flare pod. The pod detonated, wrenching her sled into a death spin. For a second, Osie was screaming, and then Beckett's grappler line shot out, snagged her tail, and hauled her back into formation. They'd fix the damage later, if there was a later. Bay door in 3, 2, 1. The squad dove. Alcazar's aperture yawed beneath them, a hexagon rimmed with flickering hazard strobes. Below, walkways overlapped like rib bones. Wheeled loader bots scuttled in confusion. No alarm yet. Temple 9's command must still think they were guided munitions, not flesh and blood intruders. Layla kicked her boots loose, swung off the saddle, and braked with her personal grav thrusters. Her sled continued forward on autopilot, parking itself against a magnetic strut under the gantry. Touchdown felt like stepping off a speeding maglev onto wet glass, but training took over. She landed low, pulse rifle raised, scanning. One by one, her people joined her, boots clanging lightly on steel. "Cut channel chatter," she whispered. Internal mics damped to a tight beam limited to her squad. She pulled up the fortress schematic, partial at best, pieced together from stolen data. Anchor control lay 17 decks below, at the axial core. Between here and there waited the free guard, auto turrets, and labyrinthine service shafts. The squad only carried a half hour of air, so speed mattered more than stealth. They advanced, rifles sweeping left-right up. Amber lighting bathed cargo crates labeled in Soru script. Somewhere far off, klaxons finally wailed. A lift door ahead trembled, then burst open as enemy Marines poured out in composite armor. Blue plasma bolts hissed overhead. Hasovich caught one in the shoulder. His flex-carbon pauldron flared white but held. Singh dropped to a knee and answered with a shotgun blast of flechettes. 2 Marines collapsed, plates clanging, the rest ducked. "Frag in!" Solano lobbed a grenade. It arced gracefully, sparked violet, and released a shaped charge of electromagnetic goo. The corridor lights died. Enemy suits shorted, convulsed like puppets before going limp. Quick, brutal, and quiet again. Ree stepped over bodies, prying open a maintenance hatch. "Service spine runs straight to the core. We can ride the elevator mag rails." "Do it!" Layla motioned her squad through. The shaft gaped vertical, a void lit by the dim glow of status LEDs. Below, lift cars whooshed past, unaware. Ree's Omni-tool spewed micro-pits into the rail face, generating handholds. The squad clipped in and rappelled downward, gravity doing most of the work. They dropped 8 decks before the shaft reverberated with an angry hum. Anti-personnel sentry drones, little glass orbs bristling with stingers, rose from below like bubbles in reverse. Worth cursed. No space to maneuver, nowhere to dodge. Layla fired first, but her kinetic slugs ricocheted off spherical shields. EMP arrow, Kim yelled, pulling a specialized bolt from his quiver. The arrowhead housed a compressed capacitor. He notched, aimed, released. The shaft filled with a blue pulse. Shields flickered, drones froze, then plummeted. Metal clanged long after they were out of sight. Anchor control greeted them with a blast door 2 meters thick. Engineers had welded a steel mosaic over the normal interfaces, daring anyone to hack it. Layla glanced at Ree. How long? Longer than we have, Captain. But there's another way. He pointed to the coolant conduit that snaked beside the door, a high-pressure line full of cryogenic helium. We pop that, flash freeze the door, then breach with thermite. She grinned behind her faceplate. Make it loud. Reset charges. The squad fanned out, weapons trained on every arc. When the helium line ruptured, frost chased across the blast door like tidal surf. 20 seconds later, Jun slapped a disk of thermite onto the center. White light brighter than dawn erupted, eating through alloy with greedy ferocity. Metal dripped molten onto the deck. Before the last spark died, Layla was inside. Anchor control was a cathedral of machinery, a ring of consoles encircling a central pit where 6 superconducting winches kept the graphene cables humming taut. Hollow screens projected stress readouts, power curves, orbital telemetry. At a glance, she saw that the exterior cables funneled enough mechanical energy to power 3 lunar cities. She also saw 30 FreeGuard engineers, some armed, some scrambling to arm themselves. Their expressions ran from shock to rage to fear. A tall woman in scarlet command stripes pointed a flechette gun at Layla. "You are invaders," she said in accented Commonwealth standard. "You would drown our children in ammonium rain and call it peace." Layla could have debated politics, how terraformers had funded Anahit's schools, hospitals, public works, but firefights left little room for nuance. She only said, "Stand down. We're cutting your fortress free. Evac pods are still operational. Live to fight somewhere that isn't strangling a planet." The woman hesitated. Then a young engineer behind her, barely more than a boy, whispered, "Commander, she speaks truth. Satellite link shows FreeGuard orbitals lost. We're alone." That truth settled over the technicians like ice water. Slowly, weapons lowered. The commander released her magazine and let it clang to the deck. "What will happen if you cut the tethers?" "The hurricane will fling you outward," Layla said. "You'll climb until the winds thin and buoyancy fails. Then you'll descend on chutes. It'll hurt, but you'll survive. Unless your fleet shoots us down. Fleet's busy. They won't waste ammo on escape capsules." The commander exhaled. "Do it quickly." Layla nodded. Ree and Beckett sprinted to the winch controls. The rest of the squad formed a perimeter, herding the engineers toward evac racks, bright orange spheres designed for rapid evacuation into upper orbit. They looked like giant caviar eggs. Ree's fingers danced. Holograms winked from red to amber to green. Hydraulic locks disengaged with a boom that vibrated souls. One by one, tension on the graphene cables slackened. External cameras showed them whipping away into the storm, flaying clouds with sonic booms. With the last cable cut, Temple 9 lurched. Artificial gravity hiccuped. Alarms howled, but there was a strange relief in the tremor, as though the fortress itself sighed after months of bondage. Layla keyed her squad. "Packages away. Exfil in 2 minutes." Engineers scrambled into the pods. When the last one sealed, the commander paused at the hatch, gaze steady on Layla. "History will judge who saved whom, Captain." "Probably," Layla said. She hit the launch stud. The pod shot up the tube like a bullet, vanishing into cloud. Temple 9, now free, began to drift. The hurricane wall grabbed the structure, spinning it like a leaf. Interior artificial gravity failed completely. Loose objects spiraled in lazy arcs. Layla's mag boots clamped, but something deep in her stomach recoiled at the shifting horizon. The squad hustled back the way they came, but corridors twisted at nauseating angles. Primary shafts compromised, Jun reported. Access collapsed between decks 10 and 12. Secondary? Layla asked. Underwater, he said, meaning flooded with coolant. No go. Options dwindled. Then Osei, whose flare pods still sputtered sparks, pointed skyward through a viewport. Lift balloons! Above the fortress, emergency zeppelins, fat white sacks filled with heated hydrogen, were auto-inflating, meant to stabilize the station's fall. Their scaffold gantries were exposed to open sky. We EVA, Layla decided. Short hop to the balloons, then ride them clear of the wall. No one argued. They'd spent months training in the jet stream. A 10-meter outside jump was practically a stroll. They reached the upper gantry amid shrieking metal. The fortress tilted 30 degrees, glazing floors with rain that blew in through ruptured hull plates. Layla keyed the hatch, and the world's roar surged in. Honey-gold clouds towered like deities. Wind, unfiltered, hammered her armor. One at a time, she ordered. She clipped a line to the rail, stepped out, and let the gale snatch her. For a heartbeat, she was weightless, dangling over a bottomless swirl of color. Then her grav thrusters caught, lifting her toward the bulging flank of the closest Zeppelin. She anchored a piton and waved. Her squad followed. Beckett, Solano, Wirth, Kim. Osei almost overshot, but snagged a hoop at the last second, laughing hysterically. When Arjun rejoined them, closing the loop, Layla allowed herself a breath she hadn't known she'd been holding. Below, Temple 9 spun into the storm like a wayward moon, lights winking out tier by tier. In minutes, it would clear the wall, rise into the stratosphere, and baptize itself in thin sunlight before gravity reclaimed it. But its long cables no longer leached power from Anahit's winds. The Commonwealth fleet would see the fortress drifting and know the mission had succeeded. The Zeppelin lurched upward, buoyed by the same agitated air. Layla tethered herself inside the emergency basket, checked her squad, all present, and opened a wideband channel. Talon to home plate. 9 is cut loose. Repeat. The fortress is off the grid. Request pickup vector. A beat of static. Then Admiral Huang's voice crackled, ragged with relief. Copy, Talon. We're tracking multiple escape pods. Retrieval craft en route. You made yourself a hurricane's worth of enemies down there, Captain. Just doing the job. Docking Bay 13 awaits. Hot cocoa, too, if you get here before Beckett drinks it all. Layla glanced at her demolition sergeant. Beckett spread his hands innocently. She smiled despite exhaustion. The Zeppelin rose above the anvil tops, into light startling and pure. Below, the Gorgon spiral churned, stripped of its captive fortress, still magnificent, but just a storm again, a force of nature, not a weapon. Layla felt a fierce gratitude, not only for the planet spared, but for the people she'd led through hell and back. Osei nudged her. So, Captain, think the brochures will mention us? Come to Anahit, now with 100% fewer enemy citadels? Only if they add hazard pay, Layla said. Wind whipped her words away, but laughter carried, bright against the roar. The jet riders had survived the siege, and the dawn that greeted them was one they had made.